Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today we're taking a look at Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered. Now this remaster just dropped on Steam and well, it kicked up quite a fuss. I'm not going to talk about all this controversy about is it worth it, do you need it, you know, you're remastering a 7 years old game and so on and so forth. We might touch this and that here and there, but that's not the point here. So let's talk numbers. The minimum GPU they want you to have is a GTX 1650 and recommended GPU is RTX 3060. So in general, this is visually upgraded version of Horizon Zero Dawn. And let's talk about the settings here. So obviously we're going with a 2K resolution, no vertical sync, no NVIDIA low latency. We're not going to use any upscalers, which is you do have access to DLSS and FSR. You also have access to frame gen, and we're not going to use any of that. For anti-aliasing, we're going to be using TAA. For the simple reason, I will show you how the OG game looks, because without actually playing them one after another, you might think that there's no difference. There is a little bit of difference, but only if in certain areas. I'm not quite sure how many there are. I would want to say so far I counted about 8 very different things I've noticed by playing through the first intro segment of the training. So we'll see that. But yeah, essentially you can even set anti-aliasing for DLA, which is not available in the OG version. And for graphics you're going with a very high preset. To be fair, this adjustment screen is a bit longer than in OG version. And the biggest difference, I guess, is translucency quality. I'm not sure about the parallax occlusion mapping. I think it might be there, but oh well. Haven't seen it. Outside of that, we're going with a very high preset. And here's the thing. This is a bit interesting title when it comes. Now, obviously, it is fresh out of the oven. So performance is actually not bad, but it's not exactly on the same level as the OG game, which was patched. Its first launch was a little bit disappointing, so to say, but then I patched it out. And honestly, I guess the biggest issue I have with this particular remaster is they changed the control scheme a little bit, and they changed the camera. So essentially you are way closer to Aloy in terms of the third person than you were originally in OG version, which I'm pretty sure you can adjust somewhere in a camera or whatever. I just didn't bother to look because it just strikes me a little bit odd that, you know, you need to go and hunt down for the settings that I must say they kind of nailed in the first time. Now, granted, Field of View probably is everyone's favorite setting to crank it out on a PC, but in general, it's kind of weird. Now, when it comes to the controls as general, again, I must say the Aloy controls a little bit more jankier in the remaster than it did on the original one. And when I was replaying through the first intro of where you fall down in ancient ruins and then you follow Rost and then you learn how to hunt and throw rocks, the Aloy's movements were just all over the place. Like, I don't know how they managed to just not copy exactly the same control scheme or the movement set, because it feels weird. And yeah, outside of that, I don't know. The performance is pretty much as I would expect for honestly day one release. As you can see, even in synthetic benchmark, we're pulling 10 gigs of video memory, 14 of RAM. We are hovering around 90-ish frames with dips here and there. And honestly, there's a bit more dips than I would expect. Even though we're running a 99K and 47 Ti, the remaster is running relatively rough around the edges. I do believe it's because we're rocking DirectX 12 API instead of anything else. Now, granted, you might say that DLSS and FrameGen or FSR would be in order to actually have better experience, but I think the main emphasis in this particular remaster is just the texture quality, improved global lighting, and just the color palette, really, because a lot of things just pops out. Like, some things I never really noticed before that was kind of bland really stands out here. In terms of standing out, vegetation has seen an upgrade. Like, you no longer have the 2D flowers and flower stalks, they actually have mass and volume now, which I guess is the little things. I mean, technically you will spend some time in the game hiding in the grass from the machines and sneaking, but I never really paid attention to it, and as I said, only when you replay, let's say, the OG version and then you come to the remaster, you will notice a difference. Now, when it comes to the pricing options, you have two options. If you don't own this game, you can buy a remaster for full price, and essentially that's what you get. If you already own this game on Steam, then you can just pay extra $10 and you can upgrade it to the remastered version. So it's not exactly that Sony wants you to buy a brand new game all over again. You can buy an upgrade. So yeah, average frames for current remaster is 92, everything cranked out. And even though we have dynamic resolution scaling off, no upscale method, as you can see, the upscale quality is still sitting on quality, so you know, just take it as you want. So yeah, let's take a look at the actual game itself. I passed the tutorial, and back to the point of paying extra to get an upgrade. You might remember Witcher 3, right? So when they released an upgraded version, you got that game for free essentially, so, and then you could just revert back if you so choose. So here we are in the remaster, and the biggest difference I guess I've noticed so far is that synthetic benchmark does not utilize GPU and actual in-game does, which is kind of weird. So I think we're just gonna skip this. Also, for skipping now you use space, in OG you use F. Go figure. As I said, the control scheme is a bit all over the place. Now, looking at the character model itself, we do see that the face has slightly changed. We no longer look at the shovel, and the hair animation is slightly different. Certain aspects is a bit more kind of in focus, but some things like this feather, well, looks kind of pathetic when it comes to it, which technically should be a bit more refined in my opinion, considering this is the main character model you're looking at. In terms of everything else, this actually looks better than original. Now, granted, the original is a 7 years old. It was almost nearly direct port from PS. So yeah, I can understand it, but in everything else, like, you cannot really see the difference unless you really play them either side by side, or you just have to play them one after another. And I'm not sure if I actually want to do that. Now, when it comes to playing these games, I don't know. I can see the difference between the OG and the remaster, but I cannot pick my favorite. I think I still kind of prefer the OG for the simple reason, probably a bit more emotional investment in that game. If I had this game to play when it just came out, I would probably be like, oh, this is definitely looking good, because the OG Horizon Zero Dawn, you can play pretty much on everything, to be fair, and I played that game with a 1080 Ti, and that was on full HD. Then I even cranked it up in 4K, and it was actually good enough. I mean, obviously not on ultra settings, but still. And even now, as you can see, we're rocking 9 gigs of video memory, 13 of RAM, 100-ish frames, and this is no upscaling. So technically it's playable, and I can't really say that, you know, this is kind of bad. And when you go to all of these ridges, it kind of does look good technically. I mean, nothing really has changed outside of that, and honestly this kind of looks like the OG game, but it only looks like an OG game if you haven't played an OG game before, because outside of that, that is definitely a completely different ballpark. So yeah, is this remaster worth it? Probably. I know that none of this will matter in the long run, so I can just pick random choices. And we're just gonna have a look at the Ross model, because Ross looks different than in the OG, and the reason I'm saying that is because the cutscenes do look slightly different from the OG version, which I guess is the whole point of the remaster. You kind of, you know, upgrade the textures and the characters and the animations, but anything else is just, I don't know, you know, it's kind of odd. It looks better and it runs fine, but it still doesn't run as well as the OG Horizon, which, if you remember the janky start of the original, the performance patches, the dedicated NVIDIA driver, in comparison to that, this actually runs a bit, you know, rough, I would want to say. We're not seeing constantly above 60, 100 frames really. So yeah, that's one of those things. So anyway, I'm just gonna quickly slide down. We need to go and gather the blaze and the shards. We're not gonna do that really. I'm just here to run around and compare certain things because I don't know. I'm not gonna really bother and replay Horizon Zero Dawn for the third time, no matter how it looks. Because when it comes to the graphical fidelity, I must say Forbidden West probably was one of my favorite ones when it comes to a clear visual upgrade for the game. And this particular one is just kinda, you know, expected, but everyone probably already finished this game like 3 or 4 times, so a lot of people have asked, so why would you even remaster a game? And I think it's because Sony just wants to experiment with their engine. Obviously they're collaborating with the Nixes, so they're doing all the porting, and they're just trying to learn anything else for the upcoming titles, like I would assume The Last of Us Part 2 or something along the lines of that. So that would be my guess why they're giving another go for this title and just asking you for a small contribution to upgrade for anything else in between. But yeah, in general, I don't know. This is not looking bad. It runs pretty decent. But yeah, honestly, the moment you start replaying this game, you kind of see that it's a bit odd. Also, Aloy suddenly now needs to catch a breath with she actually didn't do in the previous version, obviously. She was just always esports ready for it. But anyway, let's go and have a look, just a very quick overlook and a benchmark for the OG Horizon Zero Dawn, because this is the look and feel of the new one. Not a huge fan, obviously it's workable, but end of the day. Oh, come on. Could have just gone there, really. I forgot I have no skills yet. Like the jump up and slow motion shoot them, which is obviously the most overused ability I was using in this game. But yeah, let's have a look at the OG one. And here we are in the OG version of Horizon Zero Dawn, and just to reiterate the point, let's look at the graphics. So as you can see, not many sliders here, so we only have the ultimate quality available. And for display, we're still going with the 2K resolution, obviously, and we don't have anything else here as well. So let's run a quick benchmark and you will see what I mean, how it visually looks. Because even though this is an older title, well, 7 years old, so to say, you will notice that the GPU usage is also not fully maxed out, even though technically we are going with ultimate quality. And this does not translate into the main game, because in the main game everything actually is just maxed out as it should. So, you know, it's slightly odd. And now when you look at this, look at the frame rate and look at the frame time. So the frame time is very low, the frame rate is actually pretty decent. We are no longer stuck around 60 to 90, we are constantly above 100 frames. And I guess this is just at the expense that, as you can see, the image quality, the textures of the buildings is a little bit blurry. There's not enough sharpness, there's not enough contrast, and it kind of looks a bit more bleak. There's no color, and I think that the main difference, at least visually for me, is not only the contrast and the sharpness of the object or the resolution of the textures used. It kind of looks like someone just threw a bucket of orange on the remastered version, which, you know, is probably not really a bad decision, because overall, the one way to show the colors is not only HDR, but you can just adjust the color palette, and majority of the mods, which are kind of bringing older titles to life, usually is aiming for the color palette change, you know, the saturation and etc, which clearly shows a major difference. Now, granted, the question is, do you want more eye candy for the same game that you already replayed for a fraction of the price, or do you want just a new game being released? And I think this is probably the only topic I would want to discuss in reality, because considering how long Zero Dawn's been out, I personally replayed this game about 3 times. One time just for the giggle of it, one time full exploration, and even New Game Plus. Do I want to go through it for the fourth time just because it looks slightly better? And you know, obviously I know there's a lot of gatekeeping people who's gonna shout that, oh my god, it looks so good, it's amazing, but it's exactly the same as with, you know, Witcher 3. When they released the new upgraded version, visual fidelity, graphical improvements for Witcher 3, which didn't exactly work out of the box, and they had to tweak it and turn it, and even gave the people the option to actually revert back to original Witcher. You know, only certain elements would elevate your experience when it comes to graphics, because if you need to notice them first, and then it's up to yourself. I think it's a personal preference if you take this as, oh, this is going to enhance my gameplay, or you will simply notice this detail once and then you will never see it again or touch it again. Because for me, I think the biggest difference was vegetation. The plants, as I said, they no longer look 2D. They actually have mass, and they kind of more full. You can see all the leaves and stuff. At the same time, the feather on Aloy's bow, it's exactly the same. And this is just mind-blowing for myself, because, as I said, this is the one feature that should be there at the beginning. So, average frames is 141 for this particular installment, which is again more than 92. So it runs slightly better because this game is essentially a bit more lighter than the previous. Well, I mean, the OG game is lighter than the remaster for obvious reasons, because it's not using that much content to give you this thing. But here we are with Aloy already, and oh, I forgot we don't have free climb click here. Look at this feather. It's exactly the same. It is physically the same feather, and how all of this looks is, as you can see, it's just bleak. There's no contrast, there's no sharpness on any of these textures. Like the further along you watch, you can see it kind of just disappears into a blur. And outside of this, even like for the Rost itself, as you can see, Rost looks different. Like, he clearly is just, I would say, a bit more lively, almost like, you know, without makeup on it, so to say, because the face of Aloy obviously looks pretty well, as it always does, but Rost just looks better in the OG Horizon Zero Dawn in comparison to the remaster, while Aloy actually looks better in the remaster than she did in the OG. And I don't know, I guess that is literally just your own personal preference for it. And in regards to the animation of Aloy panting after the sprint, and this is what we can actually just quickly check here. I mean, this still looks good. Like, I don't know. There are things that are definitely looking better and things that are looking worse, but in general, I'd probably just replay the OG version so many times that it still kind of holds a special place in my heart, I suppose. And yeah, the control scheme just feels a bit more better, like middle mouse for the smart thingy. Whatever its name was supposed to be, I already forgot. Never paid attention to all these little tiny storytelling things. And for the visual fidelity, as I said, I mean, honestly, I think Forbidden West probably was kind of roughly the same level when it comes to it, and no one really seemed to care. They actually mocked Aloy for everything. But now, here's the fun fact. Now we've run for all this distance. Look at the panting animation. It is different than from the remaster. She just gets very ready, even though you just sprinted for essentially a mile. And I guess that's all these little things, you can notice them. Obviously, if you're looking for them, you will notice them and stuff like this. But I don't know. If you don't pay attention to it, you probably will miss it. Do you need to notice them? I mean, yeah, it's noticeable, but only if you play them side by side or one after another. Very hard to just tell it apart. Vegetation clearly stands out. Like this looks kind of bad. As you can see, it kind of shimmers all the way out there, which might be the reason of TAA instead of FXA or anything else, but some games just simply have this shimmer. The guardrays are still there, looks fantastic. In 4K, this game actually looks very, very nice. And, you know, if you play on a monitor that supports HDR, it's going to look even better. So I guess it's just personal preference. Performance, obviously, this particular title is still less taxing, so to say, for all of these things, and I just cannot seem to hit that dude, which I'm pretty sure you can do from here. But yeah, anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching, and leave a comment about, do you want to spend extra $10 to upgrade your current Horizon Zero Dawn to the remaster, or you're just gonna stick to the remaster and let Sony do their own thing when it comes to their policy and monetization schemes. See you next time. Over and out.